The sleek, polished floors of Summit Assurance's office gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights, reflecting a stark contrast to the nervous energy coursing through Mia Harrison. She clutched her neatly organized folder tightly, her palms slightly damp. Taking a deep breath, she steadied herself. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears as she approached the receptionist's desk. "I'm here for my appointment with Mr. Langston," Mia said, her voice steady despite the unease gnawing at her. The receptionist, a young woman with a tight bun and a sharper stare, glanced up from her computer. "Name? Mia Harrison." The receptionist scanned her screen and nodded curtly, motioning to a row of leather chairs by the wall. "Take a seat. He'll call you shortly." Mia thanked her and sat down, surveying the office. The room felt sterile and impersonal, the kind of place designed to intimidate rather than comfort. She mentally rehearsed her points, triple-checking her application. She knew everything was in order. There was no reason to worry. Yet the stories she'd heard about subtle and not so subtle discrimination gnawed at her resolve. "Miss Harrison?" a voice called. Mia looked up to see a man standing in the doorway. His tailored suit was pristine, and his smile was paper-thin. "Thomas Langston." She rose, gripping her folder, and followed him into his office. The space was equally cold, with walls adorned by bland corporate artwork. Langston gestured to the chair opposite his imposing desk, settling into his leather seat with a practiced air of authority. "So," he began, flipping through her file, his tone smooth but clipped, "I see you're applying for individual health insurance coverage. Why don't you start by telling me why you're here today?" Mia straightened her back, her voice steady. "I was recently diagnosed with a chronic condition. I need coverage to manage my treatment and ensure I can stay healthy. I've reviewed the policy requirements, and I meet them all." Langston's smile tightened. "We'll see about that." His tone set Mia on edge, but she forced herself to remain composed. She wasn't going to let him intimidate her. The pleasantries were about to end. Langston leaned back in his chair, exuding an air of smug authority as he flipped through the documents she had carefully prepared. His expression shifted subtly, half a smirk, half a sneer. Mia felt her stomach twist. "Well, Miss Harrison," he began, his voice silky and insincere, "it seems you've brought all the necessary paperwork, proof of income, medical diagnosis, residency, all very thorough." "Thank you," Mia replied, her tone cautious, sensing an undercurrent of disdain. Langston set the papers down, clasping his hands in front of him. "But there are some concerns." He leaned slightly forward, his smirk growing sharper. "Your income, freelance graphic design, is it? That's not exactly stable." Mia's brow furrowed. "I've been freelancing for 5 years and have a steady client base. My income meets your requirements, as you can see from the tax returns I included." Langston raised an eyebrow, feigning mild amusement. "Meets the requirements? Sure, on paper. But freelance work, as I'm sure you know, can be unpredictable. One bad month and poof, you're behind on premiums." Mia's jaw tightened, but she kept her tone measured. "That's why I've shown consistent income for several years. I've planned for unexpected situations." Langston chuckled softly, shaking his head as if her explanation were naive. "Planning doesn't account for everything, Miss Harrison. Chronic conditions can get expensive, and we have to think about the long-term impact on the system. You understand, don't you?" "No," Mia replied firmly, leaning forward. "I don't understand. I've met every qualification your company requires. What exactly is the problem?" Langston's smirk faltered for a split second before he plastered it back on. "The problem is that we have to assess applicants holistically. It's not just about ticking boxes. It's about ensuring the sustainability of our policies." "What does that even mean?" Mia shot back, her frustration seeping into her voice. "Are you saying I'm not sustainable? Based on what?" Langston leaned back again, spreading his arms wide. "Based on experience. We've seen patterns. Miss Harrison, applicants in situations like yours often pose a higher risk. We have to protect the integrity of the system." Mia narrowed her eyes, her grip tightening on the folder. "Situations like mine? Patterns? Be specific. Mr. Langston. Langston hesitated, his smile freezing on his face. Let's not make this into something it's not, he said coolly. No. Mia snapped, her voice rising slightly. Let's make it exactly what it is. You're using coded language to deny me coverage. Just say it outright. You think I'm a risk because I'm black. Langston's smirk twisted into something nastier, his eyes narrowing. That's a bold accusation, he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. I don't appreciate being called a racist simply because you don't qualify for our policies. I do qualify. Mia fired back, her voice steady but sharp. And we both know this isn't about qualifications. It's about your prejudice. Langston scoffed, rolling his eyes. Oh, please, don't start playing the victim. This is about business, not whatever agenda you're trying to push. Agenda? Mia repeated, incredulous. I'm here because I need health insurance, and I've done everything right. You're the one making it about something else. Langston leaned forward, his voice dropping to a cold, condescending tone. Ms. Harrison, we've seen this before. Applicants who think they can argue their way into a policy that isn't a good fit. People who end up costing more than they contribute. We're just trying to avoid a bad investment. A bad investment? Mia said slowly, her voice thick with restrained anger. You're talking about me like I'm a number on a spreadsheet, not a person with a life, a condition that needs treatment, and a right to be treated fairly. Langston shrugged. That's the reality of the insurance business. It's not personal. It is personal when your so-called reality is rooted in racism. Mia said, her voice rising. You think you can hide behind business decisions, but what you're doing is wrong, and you know it. Langston leaned back again, the smirk returning. Believe whatever helps you sleep at night. Ms. Harrison, but the decision is final. This policy isn't for you. I'm not leaving until you give me a real answer. Mia said firmly, her voice unwavering. You already have your answer. Langston said, his tone clipped. Security can explain it to you further, if necessary. Mia didn't flinch. No, you explain it. Right here, right now. Why am I being denied when I've met every requirement? Langston glared at her, his patience visibly thinning. You're being denied because I say so. That's all the explanation you're getting. Mia locked eyes with him, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. And that's why I'm not leaving. The tension in the room was thick, but Mia refused to look away. Langston's polished facade of professionalism had slipped, replaced by a simmering hostility. Leaning forward, he sneered. Let me explain something to you. Ms. Harrison, I don't owe you an explanation. This isn't a negotiation. You don't meet our standards. End of story. Mia's fists clenched in her lap, but her voice remained steady. I meet every standard your policy outlines. The only thing that doesn't meet your standards is me, and we both know why. Langston's lips curled into a cruel smile. Let me tell you something. Ms. Harrison, people like you are the reason policies like ours have to exist in the first place. You want to play the victim, but the truth is, you've already lost. Mia shot to her feet, her voice rising. No, the truth is, you've already lost. You've exposed yourself for exactly what you are, a racist, a coward, and a disgrace to your position. Langston stood abruptly, towering over her. I don't have to listen to this, he spat, his voice cold and dismissive. He pressed a button on his desk, summoning security. Moments later, 2 security guards entered the room, their presence an ominous backdrop to the escalating argument. Langston gestured toward Mia with a dismissive wave. Escort Ms. Harrison out of the building. She's no longer welcome here. Mia's heart raced, but she didn't flinch. Turning to the guards, she said, You're really going to drag me out for standing up for myself? Go ahead. Add more proof to the lawsuit I'm about to file. The guards hesitated, glancing at Langston, whose face darkened further. Do your job, he snapped. One guard stepped forward, his voice soft but firm. Ma'am, we need you to leave. Mia didn't move. This man is discriminating against me. You can carry me out if you want, but I'm not going quietly. Langston crossed his arms, his smirk returning. See? This is exactly the problem. You people can't ever just let things go. Mia's eyes burned with fury. And people like you can't ever seem to see what's right in front of you. Your days of getting away with this are over. The guards exchanged uneasy glances before one of them gently but firmly took Mia by the arm. Please, ma'am. Mia turned her glare on Langston. I hope you enjoy the spotlight, Mr. Langston, because when this goes public, you're going to wish you'd thought twice before opening your mouth. Langston chuckled darkly. Go ahead. Scream all you want. No one's going to care about your little crusade. As the guards escorted her toward the door, Mia pulled her arm free and turned to face Langston one last time. We'll see who no one cares about when you're the one packing up your desk. Langston didn't respond, his face an unreadable mask as the door closed behind her. The tension lingered in the empty office. He exhaled sharply, shaking his head. Some people just don't know when to quit. Mia stormed down the street, her fists clenched so tightly that her nails dug into her palms. She could still feel Langston's sneering voice echoing in her ears, his smirk as he ordered security to remove her. The humiliation of being dragged out, like she didn't belong, burned in her chest. She turned into an alley, away from the indifferent flow of the city, and leaned against the cold brick wall. Her breaths came in short, furious bursts as tears of frustration welled in her eyes. She hated that she felt this way, helpless, angry, and small. This is what they think of us, she spat aloud, her voice trembling with fury. Always a problem, always less than. No matter how hard we work, how much we prove, it's never enough. The tears spilled over, but they didn't cool the fire inside her. Instead, they burned, fueling her rage. She paced back and forth, her thoughts tumbling out in broken, angry fragments. All my life, every damn time, I've done everything right. I met their requirements, jumped through their hoops, played their stupid games, and it's still not enough. She slammed her fist into the wall, the pain in her hand a sharp counterpoint to the ache in her chest. Her voice rose, echoing in the narrow alley. Why does it always have to be like this? Why do we have to fight tooth and nail for things they hand out to everyone else without a second thought? She thought of the years she'd spent building her career, scraping by to make ends meet while pursuing her dream. She thought of the countless times she'd been overlooked, dismissed, or subtly undermined by people like Thomas Langston, people who looked at her and saw nothing but their own prejudices. Her voice dropped to a low, bitter mutter. They don't even hide it anymore. People like you, your type. They say it like we don't know exactly what they mean. The tears slowed, replaced by a simmering determination. She leaned back against the wall, tilting her head to the sky, her breath visible in the cool evening air. This isn't just him, she said quietly, her voice raw. This is the whole damn system. They build it to keep us out, to keep us down, and they think we'll just take it. Mia exhaled slowly, wiping her face with the back of her hand. Her anger hadn't subsided, but it had sharpened into something more focused. She pulled out her phone and stared at the blank screen for a moment before opening the camera. Her voice was steady as she hit record. My name is Mia Harrison. Today, I walked into Summit Assurance to apply for health insurance, and I was denied. Not because I didn't qualify, because I do. I was denied because I'm black. She paused, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Before continuing, the manager, Thomas Langston, made it clear. He called me a liability, said people like me abuse the system. He didn't even try to hide it. Her voice hardened, the fire in her eyes reflected in the screen. I'm not going to let him get away with it. This is bigger than me. It's about every person who's been dismissed, disrespected, or outright denied because of the color of their skin. And I'm going to fight back. She ended the recording and stared at the screen for a long moment. Her reflection looked back at her, tired, angry, but unbroken. With a deep breath, she saved the video. Pushing off the wall, Mia stepped back onto the bustling street. The world moved on around her, oblivious to the battle raging in her mind. But she wasn't going to stay silent. Not this time. As she walked home, the knot in her chest loosened slightly. The anger still burned, but now it was a weapon, not a burden. She wasn't sure what the next step would be, but she knew one thing for certain. Thomas Langston and Summit Assurance weren't going to get away with this.